Morning, all. All right, so we're going to talk about Barry Trotz today. Barry Trotz deciding and announcing, at least announcing yesterday, he is not taking a coaching job this coming season. That his coaching resume is going to have to wait until next year. And he didn't commit that he'll come back next year either. This isn't I'm taking 1 year off, I'll be back next year. This is I'm at least taking a year off. I'll get back to you as to whether or not I want to come back and coach next season. So it is basically a matter of him looking at his career and saying, I'm 59. I don't know how much time I have left. And so I want to make sure that everything's taken care of. And I think it really, by taking a year off, he gets to travel and enjoy himself. And he'll be able to do stuff he obviously couldn't do as an NHL coach with an 82-game regular season awaiting him. So the one quote that I thought stood out to me with his interview yesterday is the one thing that I do know, and it's a mistake everyone makes, is you think you have time and you don't. Which is true. Absolutely true. Many, many examples of that I've personally seen where you think you got time and you don't. And you just don't know what's going to happen, right? So it's not something you want to think too much about because then you kind of just, tape yourself to a chair and don't want to move. Anyways, 98-99, his first year as a National Hockey League coach in Nashville. He coaches them to a record of 28-47-7. Now, it's not a great record. 63 points is not fantastic, but they were 5 points clear of the Canucks, who were paying way more to their players and expecting way more than what they got. So this is a team that didn't finish at the bottom of the standings and was expected to. This is their first year, and their roster was not great. They had decent goaltending, a couple of decent players, but he got the most out of players that nothing was expected from. Scotty Walker goes to Nashville from Vancouver, for instance, and becomes exactly the player the Canucks had hoped he'd be for years. And so he's smart. He was smart in how he dealt with his players and how he ran his roster, and the decisions he made were ones that generally were good. And so he stayed in Nashville a long time, up until 2013, 2014, which kind of shows that coaches, I think, get fired way too often. I think it's the easy answer, is to say, all right, we were expected to be here, instead we were here. I think it's the voice behind the bench that's the problem. And it lets way too many general managers who've made iffy decisions off the hook. I think it lets players off the hook. And so I think it's great that Trotz was there as long as he was. 1,196 games he coached, 557 wins, 449 regulation losses, 60 ties, and 100 losses in overtime or shootouts. So really, 2014 we had shootouts at that point. So Barry Trotz, honestly, very good run for him with Nashville before he ends up going to Washington. Now, Washington 2014-2015, he ends up coaching them to a pretty solid record that first year. 45-26-11, 101 points. And if you're going to say, well, yeah, but there's Ovechkin and there's Backstrom and there's Karlsson, so it's not a big deal. They were coming off of a down year. He replaced Adam Oates, Hall of Famer. I loved Adam Oates as a player. It just did not work in Washington with Adam Oates as the coach. 38-30-14 was the record for the Capitals under Oates the previous season, and that was all forgotten when Trotz got there. Trotz got the most out of this team the whole time he was there. He was only there until 2018 when they win the Stanley Cup. He ends up coaching them for 328 games, 205 wins, 89 regulation losses, and 34 losses in overtime or shootouts. And that 2018 Cup, it's the first one that the Capitals had ever had in their history, and it was this great moment. And then they seemed to play hardball with them on a contract extension, which, honestly, understandable if he felt either insulted or frustrated by such a move on their part. It had to be tough, right? So for Barry Trotz going in, taking over for Oates and doing a good job, and then getting him to the Stanley Cup in 2018, that's kind of a kick, right? So he ends up leaving, and he has, I would think, a bit of a chip on his shoulder for that. I mean, I don't remember him saying anything publicly, but I imagine it's got to kind of tick you off a bit. You're offering me how much? So he ends up going to the Islanders, working for Lou Lamoriello. Lou Lamoriello, who is now out of Toronto. And nothing was expected. And the first thing that happens is Lou Lamoriello takes over, he brings in Trotz. Shortly after, John Tavares had decided to go to Toronto. So you have a team that finished the previous season 35-37-10 under Doug Weight as head coach. So he takes over from two NHL greats, Adam Oates and then Doug Weight. No pressure. But yeah, the record they had the previous season wasn't great, and then Tavares has left. And they didn't bring anybody in that really wowed the fans or media or anybody else. And so the expectations were really low for the Islanders his first season there. So when they finished the season 48, 27, and 7 and had 103 points, that surprised some people. Yours truly included. And it showed just how Barry Trotz can make the most with the least, right? Where he may not have a roster that on paper is a playoff team, and yet they get there. And that first year, they beat Pittsburgh in 4 straight. And I mean, that's a team that he was no stranger to from his time in Washington. And then they got swept by the Hurricanes in the second round. So the expectation was, well, they might have overachieved that first year. Probably don't get back there again. Well, you don't bet against a team with Trotz behind the bench, is what I learned. 2020 and 2021, they went to the conference finals both times. Meaning that, well, conference final in 2020 and technically a semifinal is what it was referred to as last year. It's the same thing. So they lose to Tampa both years. They lose in 6 games in 2020. They lose in 7 games in 2021. Arguably, and I say arguably because everything's an argument now, they were the team that gave Tampa the most trouble, both in 2020 and 2021. And I say that as a Dallas fan that in 2020 felt like Dallas was overmatched. The Islanders, I thought, were a team that gave them more of a headache than Dallas did. And then, last year, that 7-game series, and we all know Barry Trotz wasn't happy with a goal scored with Tampa having what he perceived to be 7 guys on the ice. And the replay showed it looked like 7 guys on the ice. But still, this was a team that had achieved more than anybody had expected. So this year, they missed the playoffs. Did Trotz have his best year as a coach? No. But again, it's odd to me that if a coach has a down year, we just go, well, he's fired. And it is something we don't do with players, which is good because players very often bounce back from down years. And I guess the expectation is, well, a coach can't. So it's odd to me. So after missing the 2022 playoffs, he gets fired. But his overall record, 288 games that he coached, 152 wins, 102 regulation losses, 34 losses in overtime or shootouts. Honestly, the record's remarkable. Because, again, I don't think the Islanders had a team that was, full of stars. I don't think it's a team. I mean, it's a good team from top to bottom. There's good defense there, good goaltending, but it's so well coached. And honestly, I thought Trotz being fired in 2022 was odd. Because, again, it was just the one down year after 3 pretty darn good years. You would think that would buy you some kind of a grace period, but not really. So 1,812 regular season games he's coached only trails Scotty Bowman, who coached 2,141. Scotty Bowman's the king. 914 regular season wins is third behind Scotty Bowman, who has 1,244, and Joel Quenneville, who's got 969 wins as a coach behind the bench. So Barry Trotz is in very, very good company in terms of his overall coaching career. If he decides this is the end of it, he's earned it. And since he was coaching at a younger age, because he's only 59 right now, which for a coach, he's still got time left. But because he came in early, he's coached a ton. And I would guess that if he was smart financially with everything, I haven't seen anything to think he isn't, he's probably set. Probably doesn't need to come back and coach again. So we'll see if this is the last of Barry Trotz coaching in the National Hockey League or not. But for the Jets and for other teams that might have had the welcome mat out and ready to bring him in, they're going to have to look in another direction. And from the way that he was talking about it, he's at peace with this decision. It doesn't bother him. So it might be the end of his coaching career in the National Hockey League. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about whether or not we'll see him back, say, next year. Or whether or not maybe this is it. And again, I do like that he's kind of going out on his own. And again, I understand that he got fired, and if he didn't, he would have come back for next year behind the bench for the Islanders. But after that firing takes place, he has an opportunity to go somewhere else, and he says, I'm good. And obviously, he would have made a ton of money going somewhere else. Coaches are making $4 or $5 million a year right now, depending on which signing you're looking at. Most of them are $4 or $5 million. So you have to think it would have been $5 million a year probably for 3 or 4 years. So that's probably $15 million. And he said, I'm good. And I respect that. I have full respect for that. So, all the best to Barry Trotz, and we'll see where he lands next season, if, in fact, he does decide to come back next season. But other teams are going to have to figure it out. Let me know your thoughts, as always, in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.